My name is Emily Cullen, and I'm the Mescal UL50 Poet in Residence at the University of Limerick's Creative Writing programme. Together with students from the MA in Creative Writing, we're delighted to bring you a series of Espresso Shots of Thought, a project we began last year to explore poetry and poetic process. What inspired me to devise these short segments was a quote by British Indian poet Daljit Nagra, who said that poetry is an espresso shot of thought. So we invite you to relax and enjoy an insightful jolt of poetry from the University of Limerick.
Is there anybody there? Said the traveller, knocking on the moonlit door, and his horse in the silence champed the grasses of the forest's ferny floor. And a bird flew up out of the turret above the traveller's head, and he smote upon the door again a second time. Is there anybody there? He said. Hi, I'm Eoin Butler Thornton, student on the MA in Creative Writing in University of Limerick, and in this Halloween edition of the Espresso Shot of Thought, I want to look at the nature and power of mystery through omission in poetry. I first encountered Walter Delamere's poem, The Listeners, at a young age as a reading exercise in primary school. As a picky 10-year-old, I was frustrated with other poetic offerings, such as Wordsworth's I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud, and felt that poetry perhaps just wasn't for me. Upon hearing this poem's opening, however, my interest was piqued. The strength of this poem is the way in which it combines the mundane with the mysterious. That lonely traveller's call situates the reader on a literal and metaphorical threshold between worlds. Behind the door is the supernatural, where the phantom listeners lie in wait. In the forest is the traveller's horse, his tether and means of escape back to the real world. Then overhead is the bird, a being that can pass between these two worlds. This poem transports the reader to the liminal position between these realities, this no man's land, where our napes tighten, our goose flesh bristles, and our pulse quickens. Though we have some details of the nature of the world behind the door, it's mostly left to our imaginations. In describing it so loosely, Delamere shows us that to fear something is to be ignorant of it, that the shadow wolf looming on the cave wall can occupy so much more of our terror than the real thing. It's this negative space in The Listeners that so immediately sets it apart. This literary device is perhaps most clear in a later excerpt. And he felt in his heart their strangeness, their stillness answering his cry, while his horse moved cropping the dark turf neath the starred and leafy sky. For he suddenly smote on the door even louder and lifted his head. Tell them I came and no one answered, that I kept my word, he said. To whom had the traveller made this promise? What was the nature of it? What events had unfolded to bind the traveller to his word? All of these questions and more are raised by Delamere's writing, and in doing so, he draws a poetic line around a story, one we cannot see, but one that gestures at some terrible, unknown tragedy. All is not well beyond this threshold, and the traveller feels it. And so, in a moment, he is gone. But the perspective does not leave with him. No, instead, the reader must stay behind, forever on this threshold, and read on in dread at the final lines. Aye, they heard his foot upon the stirrup, and the sound of iron on stone, and how the silence surged softly backward. when the plunging hoofs were gone. Thank you.